Welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Irishman, Englishman and Scotsman Football Podcast. Joining me from sunny Spain, Kev, how you doing?
I'm grand, man. Thanks.
Finno in Scotland.
How are you doing?
Good. And Joe back in snowy Salzburg.
Hey, guys.
All right, welcome along. And no Premier League football this week. Unfortunately, we're back to the international break. Still lots to talk about. The 4 Premier League games that were played. And, of course, the elephant in the room, Newcastle United, we will have a look at soon. So Friday night, Fulham 1, Leeds 2. I thought Leeds were real good value for money, Finno. And you were saying, actually, that you thought that the Leeds are kind of burnt out. And I really thought the opposite in this game because they were full of energy. And I think they had 2 goals disallowed before Bamford scored. And, could have won by a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, that's yet another 2 goals chopped off for offside for Leeds. It seems like they have at least one every other week. But I think what was key for Leeds was Patrick Bamford. Obviously, he scored one and I think he assisted the other. But yet he's still nowhere near that England side. And so I do wonder whether or not he's being kind of unfairly skipped over. Obviously he's got a tough group there with, Calvert-Lewin, Kane, Sterling. But I don't think he's any worse than, say, a Saka or Ollie Watkins. So I'm surprised that Gareth Southgate hasn't taken him to take a look. But yeah, I mean, Fulham soundly beaten. Scott Parker can't have any qualms about it. And it's starting to get a bit, tight to the edge for whether or not Fulham can actually claw out of the relegation zone, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think if you're a Fulham fan, you'd have been kind of counting Leeds at home as maybe one of the matches where you could have got a point, maybe 3, because the games are really, ticking off fast. There's not that many left and they'll be so disappointed. And I think the manner of their defeat as well, like you say, they were soundly outplayed for most of the match. I know they missed a brilliant chance. I think Josh Madsen missed an amazing chance early on, but apart from that, yeah, they'll be really disappointed, and it's going to be tough for them now, I think.
It's funny what you said there, guys, about Bamford. Actually, you're right. It is really weird that he hasn't taken him to give him a look. And also, I've read, and I don't know how true this is, that he's eligible for the Republic of Ireland as well. Mm-hmm. And that makes me really wonder why they haven't taken him, because he's played for both. I think he played for both at youth level, didn't he?
That's common knowledge in Ireland. Bamford,
Mm-hmm.
He kind of held his cards close to his chest as regards to what he was going to play for England or Ireland. Obviously, he represented Ireland at underage. But he came out after the Leeds game. I don't know if you guys watched the interview, and basically he said, he is waiting for his chance for England, and that's where his heart's set. I mean, he grew up in England, he's raised in England, so you have to understand that. Why he hasn't been picked, it might have something to do with his pace. Yeah, he doesn't seem to have, he's not blessed with world-class pace. He's brilliant positional sense, I have to say, and he's a really good finisher, sharp in the box. His movement off the shoulder of the centre half, really, really intelligent player, Bamford. Big guy as well. But, no, he's definitely declaring for England. It's just, I don't know if it's a case, because Southgate and Hodgson before him kind of went into this, mold of giving every player a chance and picking players, which would, stop the likes of Scotland and Ireland and Wales looking at players in Northern Ireland then. But it's only a matter of time if he keeps going the way he's going, But as regards going back to Fulham, I've watched a lot of Fulham recently for obvious reasons, being a Newcastle fan. And this is one of their worst performances in a long time. If you're a Fulham fan, you've got to be disappointed. Joe?
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, obviously, when you talk about Bamford, Che Adams was also holding out for England, but he's had to settle for Scotland now. So settle. You never know. There's still hope left.
Oh, the daggers are out, yeah. Moving on. I mean, that game gave me a lot of hope going into Saturday. I was looking forward to this one. Brighton 3, Newcastle 0. Really, lads, it could have been 5-6 or 7-0. One of the worst things come out of this game, obviously, apart from the result, Isaac Hayden, who's been probably the only bright spark in Newcastle's season. He's a workhorse, and he was supposed to leave the club a few years ago due to his family after he signed from Arsenal, where he was a product of their youth system. But a horrific injury, and the Brighton player, the young guy in midfield, accidentally fell into his knee, smashed his knee, The Brighton player could barely, put his head in his hands. He was devastated. He knew straight away Hayden's not a guy to stay down, and his season is over, and that's a big blow. But going back to the actual game itself, it reminded me a couple of years ago. I watched a game in Dublin, and Ireland played Gibraltar, and they won. I think it was 7-0. But every time Gibraltar got the ball in defence, they just hoofed the ball up the field, and it came back at them. And Ireland looked like Brazil because they're playing against bank managers and bakers and fishermen. But the Gibraltar guys were delighted because, they're playing against Premier League players in Ireland, and they didn't really care. But you could see like how happy they were to represent their little island, little country. This was very similar. The only difference was that the Newcastle players are millionaires, and they're getting paid $100,000 a week. And Brighton absolutely played them off the park from minute 1 to minute 92. They completely destroyed them, and they're a really well coached team. They look good. But, Newcastle were just absolutely horrible. They were just terrible. There was no heart. There was no hope. There was no chemistry. There was no confidence. And I disagree with what you're saying there, Joe. I think Fulham will get a chance. And I think Newcastle will have, at the minute, no chance of survival. Kieran Clark came out and he said he didn't feel like the players were, and I quote, up for it. It's a relegation battle. You're in that position. It's one of the biggest games of the season. If you can't get up for that, what can you get up for? And just quickly before we move on to Steve Bruce, Trevor Sinclair this week, the ex West Ham QPR England winger, he brought up a brilliant point about Ryan Fraser, and he said he's not surprised at Ryan Fraser that he downed tools and didn't put the effort in. And he said, go back to Bournemouth after the restart of the season. Ryan Fraser basically refused to play for Bournemouth to keep himself fit to hold out for a free transfer. Is that the kind of player you want in a relegation dogfight? No.
Yeah, it's looking pretty desperate for Newcastle. But I think, 2 wins in their past, 18 league games.
20.
And obviously, there you go. And that's obviously including the games where they've had, their star players. It's not just an issue of injuries or anything like that. It seems to be very deep-rooted. And yet Newcastle have a massive struggle on their hands in terms of the run-in, because I think you play Burnley, Sheffield United and Fulham, but the rest of the games are all against teams vying for top 4, top 6 in European football. The one saving grace has to be that you're playing Sheffield United and Fulham, and more and more it's looking like that final match of the season against Fulham is going to be a winner stays up kind of encounter. But yeah, desperate for Newcastle. On the other hand, I'm sure Joe would be able to speak to it a bit more. I would say that Brighton are probably now safe. 6 points clear and a game in hand on Fulham. It really feels like it's become a four-team race to the drop.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think as bad as Newcastle were, we should give Brighton some credit. They were really confident. They were brave. I thought they looked like a really well-coached team. And this result has been coming for Brighton. They'd been playing quite well, but just hadn't quite been getting, the goals and the wins. They were due to absolutely spank someone, and it just happened to be Newcastle. I think they probably should be safe now. They've won 2 in a row. They're probably going to pick up another 1 or 2 wins between now and the end of the season to guarantee their safety.
Can I just cut to the chase here? So, JP, why is Steve Bruce still managing that team?
Right, Kev. His record since December, like Finna brought up there, is 20 games and 2 wins. He's had clear public issues with players. Matt Ritchie, the row in public. There's also talks about big problems with Andy Carroll and Dwight Gale. And supposedly a group of senior players at Newcastle have wanted to go over Bruce's head to the managing director, Lee Charnley, and say, look, we need change. So he's obviously lost the dressing room a long time ago. But this will probably answer your question. It will cost Mike Ashley £1.7 million to sack him. So the Newcastle players, from what I've heard, actually thought that he was gone from a phone call after the game on Saturday night at Brighton. On Sunday, Mike Ashley, who doesn't normally publicly talk, came out and said, yes, we're back in Steve Bruce and we're staying with the manager until the end of the season. Now, the next thing I'm going to tell you is absolutely bonkers. So the next Newcastle game is April the 3rd against Tottenham. Now you think, right, Newcastle haven't got that many internationals going away. And there are some guys to come back, the likes of, say, Maxime and Callum Wilson. Almiron just came back. He probably rushed back too quick. Spurs will have, I think, 14 guys away on international duty. So you think you get this group together and try and mold them into, kind of a siege mentality to do something, yeah? What Steve Bruce has done, he says, okay, lads, out of the 9 days, you can have 6 of them off. So you got 6 of the 9 days off. What kind of lunacy is that? It's absolute bonkers. It's just mental. And, like Steve Bruce, he's not going to become a better manager overnight. He's not. Mike Ashley's not going to change his philosophy. So things are not going to change there. But Mike Ashley and Newcastle would have lost £40 million in the 2017-28 season when they went down. That's how much, obviously that they lost from relegation and, TV money and that kind of stuff. So, but Steve Bruce has managed Villa, he's managed Sunderland, Newcastle, great career at Man United as a player. He's not short of a few quid. And what he does say publicly is that he's a Newcastle fan, that he's from Newcastle, he's a Newcastle fan. So if I had a message to Steve Bruce now, you're saying you're a Newcastle fan. If you are, walk away. Give somebody the chance to save the club now while they have 9 or 10 days. Get someone in. Just walk away.
I understand the sentiment, JP, but at the end of the day, it is a business. £1.7 million is a hell of a lot of money to anybody, regardless of if you've got £1 or £1 million in the bank. I do think it's interesting that he's let the team go their separate ways for an extended period of time. You do just wonder whether or not that reset will help them, come back and feel a bit more re-energized as opposed to living in each other's pockets, because something needs to change. And clearly what's been happening over the past 3 months hasn't worked. And so try and do basically everything that you've not done previously to try and get them, because really I think all you need is 4 points to stay up. I think realistically, if we're looking at Fulham over the last 5 games, 4 points might be enough to save you.
Just going back to that £1.7 million, Fido, Mike Ashley, he's not a stupid man, but surely he can do the math. £1.7 million he'll save without sacking Bruce, but he's going to lose 30-40 million from relegation. And then the other thing is, would somebody want to buy the club for £350 million he's asking for if they're in the Championship? The answer is probably no. So surely it makes sense. I mean, they brought in Graham Jones a few weeks ago, who did make a difference before the Southampton game. And they have been very unlucky with injuries. But, everyone's got injuries. If you got injury, spend in January then. Mike Ashley is not going to change his way. The £1.7 million, if I was him, I'd pay him, because if there's a chance someone could come in and save them, Eddie Howe or someone. But at the minute, lads, looking at the fixtures, like you said, looking at Fulham's fixtures, I really can't see us staying up. I can't, I mean, okay, when we come back, it's Tottenham. And Newcastle have got a weird record against Tottenham. Sometimes we do well against them. Sam Maxine will be back and Callum Wilson will be back, but there's just no heart. There's no fight. There's no soul there at all, really. And it's like watching a Sunday League team. That was like watching Brazil and Faroe Islands. That's how far they were apart, how good Brighton were on the ball.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, slightly facetiously, but if it wasn't for COVID, instead of those 6 days off, you'd be going there. You'd be going out to Malaga, or you'd be going down there somewhere, wouldn't you? The team would be going there for a week of setting off fire extinguishers and having a bit of bonding. And actually, like, joking aside, maybe something like that. I can sort of get that, that you might get the team together. But you are right. If that's true, 6 days for them to just all go their separate ways, well, they can't really go anywhere, right? As far as I understand, in the UK, you're not really supposed to go anywhere. So what they're going to do, they're going to sit and brood in their house. Football players, we were talking about Patrick Bamford earlier on, and he's got this reputation of being a very cultured gentleman who plays, lots of musical instruments and speaks, lots of languages. I don't know if that's the case with many of the Newcastle side. Maybe they are, but if they're just going to sit in their house, sitting on the sofa playing video games or whatever for 6 days, that does not seem like a spectacularly good use of that potential time. Even if they can't, go on a jolly.
I'm just going to ask you, JP, so you've got 9 games left. Who realistically would come in and take on this challenge? Like, I just can't see someone like, Eddie Howe doing it, to be honest.
Well, to answer that, Joe, even if we hadn't got 9 games left, and knowing what every manager knows from the likes of Keegan to Pardew, even if there was a whole season left, it's very hard to imagine someone coming in, working under a different football club where the chairman will back you to Mike Ashley, because you know what you're going to get, and you're not going to get a lot. So honestly, I would probably get rid of Bruce and put Graham Jones in charge until the end of the season.
It's a great point, Joe, because it reminds me an awful lot of Alan Shearer's time at Newcastle. This idea that let's just get a legend in and throw him to the wolves. But I don't think even, the most highly esteemed Newcastle legends are going to take a role like this, because I think they're on a hiding to nothing. And I think that's where Ashley is a very smart man, and he knows that they're on a hiding to nothing. And so therefore he's going, well, yeah, maybe 1.7 million, but also maybe they've all got relegation percentage drop clauses in their contracts, and that 1.7 suddenly becomes £900,000, and then it becomes a lot cheaper to rebuild, and then you can get it in. But Newcastle as a club, this is a very cyclical club now. If they do go down, this will be their 3rd relegation in 12 years. So it's starting to become a pattern, rather than it's very much like West Ham in the early 2000s, where we were up and down and up and down. And for a club the size of Newcastle, something does drastically need to change. I just can't see it under Ashley.
No, like I listened to Stan Collymore during the week. I don't listen to Stan Collymore a lot, but he really made sense. And he said he's like a kind of a young kid who got a puppy dog, and he was too young to realize, what to do with the puppy dog. So he was kind of poking it and prodding it and teasing it, and that's kind of what Mike Ashley is doing with the Newcastle fans. And the more they protest, the more he just says, basically, well, I'm going nowhere. And yeah, I'm just going to play with you and destroy your club, which is what he's done. And there's nothing they can really do. And I said at the start of the season, as I have done every season, Newcastle is not really a football club. It's a business to him. But really, I think, he's got to realize that another relegation is going to cost him a lot of money, a lot more than 1.7 million. Surely he can see that. But, I just think Steve Bruce is very limited as a manager. He hasn't really done it anywhere he's gone. I mean, Graham Jones was at Belgium. He was at Bournemouth. He was under Roberto Martinez. He's a little bit more cultured. We started to play a little bit better football when he came in. Unlucky with the injuries, but Bruce is limited. So if you're a Newcastle fan, walk away. Let Graham Jones stay till the end of the season and let him take the flak if they go down. But something has to change. Give it a go. Sleepwalking to relegation.
I think you do raise a good point about the coaching, and I think it's instructive to look at a league like the Bundesliga now, where there's something like 8 coaches in the Bundesliga, or will be next season, have all come through a certain style of coaching, right? It's something to do with the Red Bull world, where they've come through this almost like academy of coaching, where it's very technical, lots of analysis. It's a new generation of coaching. It's brought a breath of fresh air into the Bundesliga. And I've got nothing against Steve Bruce. I don't know anything about him really, other than to say I don't think he has that background. You sort of think of him as a relatively, or I think of him as a relatively, youngish sort of bigger, I suppose, because he's a, relatively recent, player. But he's 60 years old. He's an ex-player, but he's been an ex-player for an awful long time now. And as far as I know, he's not, at the vanguard of any any coaching revolution or anything like that. And I do think, we're going to come within another year or two, we're going to look at managers like Steve Bruce, again, not talking about him particularly individually, but people like him, those ex-players who've just come through and, done the usual sort of merry-go-round of clubs. And I'm going to think that's not really the right way to, the right sort of figure to put, your trust in a 300 million or 350 million pound business, like you say. And, I think it won't be long before we'll see a lot younger. We'll see many younger coaches and many more with a kind of technical technocrat background, rather than the likes of Bruce and co.
Aston Villa 0, Tottenham 2, Morales and Kane. Good win for Spurs, puts them kind of back in the hunt. Gareth Bale just came out today and said that his plan was to basically spend the season at Tottenham and then go back to Real Madrid.
I think that was a fairly straightforward thing to say. I think he was just asked like a sort of almost like a factual question, and he is on a loan deal, right? He's on a 1-year loan deal, so I think he was just making the point that, to be honest, it was probably more of a point to Spain rather than Tottenham. It was more to Real Madrid saying you haven't got rid of me, and don't know what he's got left on his contract. but he'll be very talking about being paid. I suspect he'll be very keen on getting that paid in full.
And I think probably if Spurs do claw back that 3-point difference between themselves and Chelsea and they manage to get Champions League football, I reckon there probably will be a greater discussion between Tottenham and Real Madrid. Do I think that he's necessarily worth the outlay that... Well, he's certainly not worth the outlay that Madrid are paying at the moment. Will he be worth the outlay that Tottenham will need to pay? Potentially not, but I think for the shirt sales and the fan relationship alone, he's probably only got one real suitor as a club.
Yeah, and the final game Sunday, Finna, was sorry to laugh. It's very comical because you actually told us on the group. I mentioned how bad Arsenal were. And I checked the score, and I think it was 3-1 and 3-0. But what I didn't watch this game, but it just sounds like it's absolutely bonkers.
Yeah, look, it was a great game for the neutral, and an absolute horror show, I think, for both sets of fans for different reasons. West Ham absolutely dominated Arsenal on every blade of grass for the first 35, 36 minutes. And then one own goal, a second own goal, and then you just knew that the tide was turning. West Ham, it was the first 30 minutes was a total contradiction to the way that they played against Man United. Jesse Lingard was absolutely untouchable, and really playing in the way that Man United fans have been screaming out for him to be playing for the last 2 years, and fully deserving of his England call-up. There were some dodgy decisions by the referee / VAR. I think it was their second goal. A foul wasn't given. They played a quick free kick and the ball was still rolling, and none of this stuff was checked by VAR. The goal was just given. You just kind of started to feel like the tide had changed. Antonio missed an incredible chance to put the game to bed, and then you just kind of knew that something was going to happen. So yeah, incredibly frustrating for West Ham, and probably quite a frustrating game for Arsenal as well, because they would be thinking if they hadn't switched off for 30 minutes, that would have been a walk in the park for them. I do have to give a quick shout out though to Declan Rice. L'Equipe have just listed him as the second most valuable midfielder in the world behind Bruno Fernandes, which I think if you watched him on Sunday, you can absolutely see why. There's that clip of him 85, 86 minutes on the clock, gets the ball on the 18-yard line of his own box, sprints past half the Arsenal team and has a shot on goal. Just showed that absolute power and pace. And I think, yeah, congratulations to him on a personal note, but on a team level, yeah, very frustrating.
Sorry, did you say they've listed him the second most valuable midfielder in the world?
Yep, behind Bruno Fernandes.
Is it April Fool's Day already?
Well, who else are you going to put there?
Well, N'Golo Kante to start with.
Oh, you got Pogba on his day, surely. Kante, yeah. One of the Bayern Munich players, maybe.
In terms of the sheer value of Declan Rice, I think he probably is the second most valuable. In terms of money, that any team will have to spend in excess of £100 million for Declan Rice. I'm not saying that anybody's going to pay that, but nobody's paying £100 million for N'Golo Kante.
Next season, Kev will tell you, they'll give you Jordan Henderson and 20 million.
Yeah, and Golden Sullivan might actually take it, to be honest.
All right, folks. Kev, go back to you. Of course, we could not end our podcast without one of your lyrical masterpieces.
Yeah, I've got a quick one for you somewhere. Just got to find it. Here we go. There was an ancient mariner, and he told this tale to me of West Ham scoring 5 great goals, but being held 3-3. Just 4 games this weekend, but still shocks they did produce. None stranger than how Newcastle are still coached by Steve Bruce. A win for Leeds at Fulham gave the Magpies quite a tonic, only for their form next day at Brighton to be chronic. Trossard struck just for the break, and Welbeck nicked a second. A third from Mopai rubbed it in. Could the championship now beckon? 9 to play, 2 off the drop. Gadzooks, they're in some danger. You might think that there's work to do, but oh no, not this trainer. It's 6 days off for Bruce's men. The work they've done is plenty, despite the fact they've only taken 2 wins now in 20. Otherwise, the weekend winners, they were Tottenham Hotspur. 2-0 v Villa, Kane on form, their top 4 hopes do prosper. And West Ham, they'll be cursing after somehow only drawing. 3-0 up, the arse caught cold, but second half they're thawing. 2 own goals, if only we'd all had a cheeky bet, as in the dying seconds in swoops Alex Lacazette. We have a little breather now, then return with a vengeance. And yeah, it's still a pisser, there'll be no fans in attendance. Come back soon to see whether you're sober or post-Shedful. if I can find new ways to call this Liverpool side dreadful.
Brilliant stuff, Kev. Enjoy your San Miguel in sunny Spain.
I will. On it already, mate.
Cheers, Joe.
Thanks very much.
Nice one, Finno.
Cheers, guys.
This has been the Irishman, Englishman, and Scotsman Football Podcast. Don't forget, if you're listening on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to hear more of our podcasts, please click on the red subscribe button on the bottom right-hand side. Thank you.